Geno Auriemma had some interesting comments on the first day of the women's practice yesterday. Let's talk about it and jump on. Locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Your team every day. Before we dive into today's show, I just want to make a quick moment to ask for a small favor. If you're enjoying the content here, please take a second to subscribe and follow also the audio versions wherever you listen, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, doesn't matter. It really helps this show grow, and I truly appreciate all of your support. Every follow, subscription, download helps create more revenue for UConn NIL because Locked On UConn is donating 10% of all revenue to Bleeding Blue for Good. So by supporting this show, you're directly supporting the UConn athletic program's efforts in the NIL world. So thank you for being a part of this Locked On UConn community. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you get started with $200 in bonus bets. Sorry, FanDuel. Get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So I started the cold open by saying that Geno Auriemma had some interesting comments. And whenever you listen to a Geno Auriemma press conference, it's, he's done this 7 million times. So he is 100% respectful and really kind of does a really great job of engaging with the media in person. And he talked about, how that first day of practice, there's so much to unpack, and essentially everyone's vision of UConn was them losing to Iowa in the Final Four, in kind of controversial fashion with the offensive foul call and all that stuff. So, you think that the team, even though some of the players obviously didn't play for injury, but looks just like that from what you saw in March. These are Geno's, I'm paraphrasing his comments. And then you actually see what you have from incoming freshmen and people that are coming back, and you realize that you've got to start from scratch. And there's always kind of out of whack expectations when the season starts. How many people have said that, UConn's going to win both the men's and women's titles this year. So obviously the target is on the basketball capital of the world, but this is where the foundation is laid. And I want nobody but Geno Auriemma to kind of lay that foundation with these players than him. So I'm going to jump all over the place, but the headliner is always going to be Paige. So Paige Bueckers is setting a tone, according to him. This is the most aggressive that I've seen her since she's been here. Putting that in quotations, and that's huge. Paige's leadership and on-court tenacity are exactly what this team needs. We chronicled that in yesterday's show, in just that little scrimmage that we watched. And they're ready to embark on another championship chase. So, I think she's firm, but encouraging and excited about her opportunity, according to Geno. So, obviously we talked about her giving advice to younger players like Ayanna Patterson. So I think she's really accepted that, and she did some media availability as well. On the flip side, Geno highlighted KK Arnold and Ashlyn Shade. He's seen the improvement he wanted from them, but there's more to come. Both have played a lot of basketball, and it starts to show in their decision-making and court awareness. KK in particular, he has been stepping up by her playmaking and ball handling, while Ashlyn has refined her scoring ability. Things Geno will certainly lean on as the season progresses. And some of the other stuff, he talked about some of the injury focus with Az Fudd's recovery. And while she's still not fully ready, there's optimism. This is a quote from him. Az will probably be back sooner than anyone else. He said tempered some expectations, knowing that she won't be ready for early November games. Still, her return before the heart of the schedule is crucial, especially with big games looming on UConn's calendar. On top of that, AZ's comeback timeline is ahead of Caroline Ducharme and Aubrey Griffin, so the team will have to manage without those key players for a bit longer. So that's why the incoming freshmen like Sarah Strong are so important. Start of practice, he revealed some interesting stuff. First off, someone told him about Nika Mule, so man, prayers for Nika. I feel awful for her. It looks like, I think it's official that she tore her ACL. It was a non-contact injury anyway, so it just didn't look good. And he said he was just like, oh man, I didn't hear that. You could tell Geno is just a really empathetic and caring guy, contrary to, maybe his public persona, especially with his players. I mean, Nika is a wonderful player for him. And, he mentioned about how much basketball she played this year and how it almost, never stopped, but how much she loves the game, and how he's feeling awful for her because she's going to be without it, and can't imagine how that makes her feel. So I would imagine Geno after practice, reached out, does what he does because, she was a valuable player for him for years. So I just really wanted to highlight that because we like to talk hoops, and we're going to, dive into a bunch of stuff today with Blanca Quinones, the big Ecuadorian recruit that we just signed. We're bringing on a guest to talk about it, but just, wanted to make sure we did that. And then and highlight and talk through Nika and wish her the best. Then lastly, I thought it was an interesting comment that he made about our number one recruit, Sarah Strong, about how, you can start to see that in the last month, no one truly separated themselves. But Geno thinks that, Sarah's the type of player that he can already tell, like, that now they're in a scrimmage and not a scrimmage, a practice, a more structured environment, that those kind of juices started flowing, the competitive nature and her instincts. I think his quote was, some players, you can see they don't have great instincts for what they're supposed to do, and some players do. And she does. I think the first question was, what are your first impressions of Sarah Strong? And he said that she's pretty good at basketball. I love Geno is great for those simplistic answers and directly to the point. And then lastly, talking about Caitlin Chen, another intriguing player who comes in from Princeton. He loves that she's aggressive and hungry. Geno loves her mindset, describing how she attacks the basket and thrives in tough situations. Coming from a program that had some success, he also feels like she's come in and feels like she already knows how to win. I thought that was a pretty telling statement, that she brings 4 years of experience to the table, which is completely evident in her play. And then with Yana, was mentioned about, maybe she was a bit over anxious, and that's understandable given the time away from the court. But it's clear Geno sees potential in Yana. In particular, she's looked great physically and is in solid condition for not having really played a lot of basketball. So I think there's a lot of I don't want to say there's a lot of cautious optimism with UConn this year. And I say that because of all the injuries they had last year. And I think most people, if they stay healthy, believe this is a championship roster that Geno will be able to, and his staff will mold into potentially a 12th championship. So, and then lastly, he brought up Diana Taurasi's potential retirement, and he expressed some mixed feelings, saying, selfishly, I hope she keeps playing, and selfishly, I hope she retires. It's clear that no matter what Diana decides, he's going to be, it'll be a tough moment for women's basketball. Geno even said she was about 20 years ahead of her time, which I couldn't agree with more. She, speaks volumes to how the incredible impact she's had on the game. Overall, Geno's impressions of day one are a reminder that this team is starting fresh, essentially, right? Because of all the injuries and people coming back and working back into the game. But the best thing I can tell you about this team is, I know some people don't like this, but they have Paige Bueckers. And when you have a player like that that's so impactful to both sides of the floor, she makes everyone around her better. So if they get healthy, I truly feel like she's going to lead them to the promised land. So we're going to go pay one quick bill and then bring in our special guest to talk about Blanca and her skills, and really kind of dive deep into the 2025 recruiting class, specifically with the talk around Blanca Quinones coming up after this. What's up, everybody? UConn fans, anybody watching this? FanDuel is giving away $200 in bonus bets for new customers. So if you haven't used FanDuel.com, and why wouldn't you? It's, you can go have some fun and make some bets and try to win some money. Do it now. You bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Go get some money, guys. Tell them I sent you. There's no promo code. This is a 100% offer across the board. So check it out and tell them Locked On sent you. All right, we're back on Locked On UConn. As promised, I want to welcome to the show a Alfred Corriet, an international recruiting scout and contributor to herhoopstats.com, where he writes about the WNBA's CBA, salary cap, and the New York Liberty. Alfred also runs a YouTube channel where he breaks down the highlights and talented players in the world of women's basketball. Let's bring him in right now. Where is he? There he is. How you doing, man? Thank you so much for being on. Really appreciate you taking some time. I have one quick question before we get into some of the stuff I sent you. I had someone send this to me, and I think I made the mistake just because of the way it was written. She's like, I'm not blaming you, but I feel like her name is Blanca Quinones, not Bianca. So that L looked like an I, and then I took it and ran with it. And I'll apologize right now to her because I hate that I made that oversight, but I've changed it, and I want to make sure that people know her name is Blanca, not Bianca. Correct?
That is correct. Blanca Quinones.
Thank you very much. Okay. All right, man. Well, listen, I really appreciate you coming on. I watched a bunch of your breakdown videos. They're fantastic. So, and I also thought, why not, when you have a talent like Blanca that just looks phenomenal, and I think UConn fans need to meet her and kind of understand the talent that they're getting. How would you describe Blanca Quinones' overall game, and what stands out most to you?
Yeah, so when you look at Blanca Quinones, you're looking at someone who's a 6'1" versatile wing, someone that can, score, someone that can defend, someone that has quality athleticism. And I think it's really her IQ and footwork that are the things that stand out to me, because when you're looking at a player that has so much polished things about her game at such a young age, you really have to marvel at her game and say, wow, this is a player that can be special one day. And I think you talked about it in your previous episode, just some of the moves that she does on the floor. It's not every day you see someone her age doing stuff like that. So I think for UConn to land a player like that, it really bodes well for the program.
Yeah, and she's because of where she's from, it's kind of under the radar. Like not to people like yourself who are like really entrenched in this world, but even to diehard UConn women's basketball fans and basketball fans in general, her talent is kind of under the radar. I mean, can you speak on that? Because she's not on like the regular recruiting numbers that we talked about with some of the players that went to like Monteverde or IMG Academy. So I think the fact that I found this after she signed and then found you, I was blown away by how good she looks. Do you think she's kind of under the radar, that she's going to surprise people when she comes to the States?
Oh, very much. I think she's definitely going to surprise people because, the first time I got a glimpse of Blanca Quinones' game was going to the Basketball Without Borders camp at Phoenix. And, seeing that type of player, it's like, wow, you never really hear about a specific talent like that, especially coming from South America, coming from Ecuador, most places. So, to see what she can do, I was like, I had to find out as much as I can about this player because, for someone that has that type of talent and, not much is known about her, we really had to see like, okay, like what can she do? So, going back and looking at her videos from Italy, seeing what she did at Campobasso, and you're like, oh wow, like this is not just a fluke. This is someone that's legit. And for her to just be under the radar like this, I think UConn fans are in for a big surprise.
I think a happy one, if I was being completely honest. In terms of her athleticism, I think that's the thing that struck me. One of the videos I feel like you posted, and then I did a deeper dive. Her transition from defense to offense, the ability to get out on the wing. I saw multiple Euro steps that she does, and one in particular that I talked about in the last episode was her taking it and kind of crossing over and essentially doing a Euro step and finishing on the other side of the basket. Again, to your point, 17-year-olds typically don't have that ability yet. That's something they probably, get when they're in their 20s as they ascend to the WNBA or playing in Europe. How does she compare like athleticism? Is there a comp for her? Like, could you put a finger on it? Because I can't.
Yeah, that's the thing with Blanca. There's just no comp. I think you can really put her like at a collegiate level. I think the one thing you really want to see is like pro comps for Blanca Quinones. Yeah. This was a player that, quite honestly, I think could have, entirely bypassed the collegiate system and gone pro and could have, crafted a name for herself professionally. But when you look at types of wings, on the pro level, you look at players like a Benijah Laney Hamilton, like a Gabby Williams, just elite, versatile wings. I think that's really the type of the early mold you're seeing with Blanca Quinones. And, for players that are in her class, I think it's hard pressed to find someone that has her tools.
Yeah, and UConn fans are very familiar with Gabby Williams, and I think the world is familiar with her because she almost single-handedly took France to gold in that final game against the USA. So that's a phenomenal comp. I appreciate that. I definitely can see that. What do you think her biggest strength is?
I think the biggest strength is the versatility, like I've talked about, because again, like usually when you're looking at players coming in, especially in that high school age, they're usually good at one thing or the other. It's like they're usually just a good defensive player or they're a good offensive player. But you're looking at someone that has all of those tools, put together, and it's just, jarring to just see like a player that's that good at that age. I think the one thing that I would like to see if Geno and the coaching staff can tap into is seeing if she can develop more of those playmaking skills, being more of a facilitator, being more of a point forward at times where, you're not necessarily relying on her just to be a scorer, you're not relying on her just to be a defender. But, can she set up plays for others? You're going to have so much quality UConn talent coming in. You look at players like Gandhi, you look at players like Jana, can she be put in positions where, she's also creating plays for other people and not just creating plays for herself?
Makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, we're going to continue this conversation about Blanca coming up. We just got to go and pay some bills so I can keep my job. And then we'll come back with Alfred Corriet and talk a little more about Blanca Quinones, the talented Ecuadorian basketball player that we just signed. Coming up after this. Game Time. You guys know all about it. Download the app. If you watch this show at all, I've talked about this on almost probably every show that's been in during the college football season. Go and get this $20 off your first purchase because right now it's the easiest way to find tickets. UConn's playing Temple tomorrow. It's home. It's in East Hartford, 3:30 kickoff. Go support your Huskies. They're on a 2-game win streak, 3 wins, looking to kind of continue the momentum. Get $20 off when you use the promo code LockedOnCollege. I think I saw tickets yesterday, and if we just take a quick look at the Game Time app, I'll do it live for you guys. Not really live, but you know what I mean. Let's check it out. Right now, super deal, upper sideline, 200 level, row 9, $26. If you get the $20 off, that's a $6 ticket to go watch a live football game and some really great players and stuff. Like right now, there's tickets everywhere. If you want to go expensive, you can go $88 for kind of front row, but you still get $20 off. So look, plenty of great deals at the rent, plenty of tickets available. Go support your UConn Huskies and download the Game Time app and use the code LockedOnCollege for $20 off your first order. All right, let's bring back Alfred. I almost called you Alfred, like it's Batman. Alfred Corriet. I apologize.
No worries, I get that all the time.
I was about to ask you, like, you probably do get that because when I found you on Twitter, I actually looked at it a few times, like, is that Alfred or Alfred? And double checked it when I put your details here. Tell everyone where they can find your stuff before we get more into Blanca's game and predictions for her at UConn. Tell people where they can find you, your YouTube channel. I want everyone to subscribe.
Sure. So you can find me on X. I think you have my X in the video. I usually post a lot of the quicker videos there on scouting, on breakdowns. Also, if you're a fan of the New York Liberty, I do also cover the Liberty for her hoop stats. So you can find stuff on the Liberty there. But I'm also on YouTube at Alfred Corriet. My name, you can find me on YouTube, where you can usually find more of the longer form breakdowns of players. And I usually focus more on the international side of things because I think the international game is here and it's coming, and it's just so expansive that there's just so much talent to be tapped into. So I think find me on YouTube, find me on X, and hopefully you enjoy the content.
Awesome, man. Quick comment for you: are the Liberty going to win it all this year?
Well, we will see. I mean, it's a big game tonight, and I think if they can get past the Las Vegas Aces, you're going to have some 2 tough teams in Minnesota and Connecticut. But I think this Liberty team, when you look at the pieces put together with Brianna Stewart, a UConn great, John Paul Jones, Ionescu, Benijah, Courtney Vandersloot, look at the emergence of a Leonie Fibich, someone who, again, another international prospect that many didn't necessarily know about and, burst on the scene, and the Liberty found something that was key for their team. So I think, Liberty have the tools they need to go all the way.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I mean, that's why I mentioned it, because I know a ton of our fans are Connecticut Sun fans and keep tabs on Brianna Stewart, who's on the Liberty. So really appreciate it. And hopefully people will come to follow you, because now they can get some more insight into players that they want to talk about. All right. So back to Blanca. I want to call her Bianca, but I won't again, because every time I see it now, I feel like I have to pause. But Blanca's game is, the word transformational is silly, but she reminds me of the type of player that can come in and really dominate if she can transition to the college game. I think that's the biggest question I have in this is what's that adaptation going to look like for her, to come in and not have culture shock. Like even heard Sarah Strong in the first media availability, the number one recruit in the country, say, well, Stores is, there's not a lot going on. So I'm just, from that perspective as a kid, how do you think her transition will go?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the biggest test of her adaptability, because, you're really coming into an entirely different world, in a sense, coming to an entirely different country, even though she participated in camp, an entirely different way of living, an entirely different way of maybe playing the game of basketball. There may be a bit less physicality that you may be used to on the international level, on the Italian level. How do you adjust? How do your moves adjust to adapt to just how things are called? Just overall personalities that you're going to see here. I think there's just going to be a lot of things going on. But I think when you have a coach like Geno Auriemma, who's seen and done it all on basically so many levels, he's the type of person that can really, make someone comfortable at home and really get them adapted to the different games. And I'm very curious to see how Geno, meshes both the American game, but also what Quinonez has done on an international level and bring it into a very holistic UConn player.
It's a great point. Kind of like dive into the weeds here with me. Her shooting mechanics and scoring ability, they've evolved. Have they evolved at all since you first scouted her? And where do you think her ceiling is as an offensive threat?
Yeah, so I think her shooting mechanics, she has a pretty fluid and quick jump shot, if you've seen from some of the videos. I mean, the box score may not reflect it, because I believe she shot 29% last year from 3 at Campo Basso. But when you have a player that has fluid motion, it's just really about the reps. And again, she's 17, so it's not like you're expecting her to be a prime marksman right out of the gate, but I mean, she can knock down the 3. And then when you look at the fact that she has a quick, fluid jump shot, can occasionally hit the 3, but then also has such a crafty skill set, I think her offensive capabilities are endless. It's just a matter of, putting in the work, continuing to put in the work, and continue to develop under that UConn banner.
Do you think that it was attractive to Geno that she played in Europe, in Italy, to be specific, in that kind of maturity? Because Geno's very he's old school. I mean, let's just call it what it is, right? He brings in freshmen. They always have a top recruiting class. But do you feel like, and recently he's been kind of tapping into more of the international player pool. Do you think he's doing that because he wants that kind of, I don't want to say instant gratification, but like the ability to come in and actually be a pro at that college level? Because let's face it, she is a pro. Like, she's played professional basketball for a couple of years. I think she started at 15. Am I wrong about that? I think I read that somewhere. But what are your thoughts on that? Like, you feel like that's kind of the reason why he's doing it, because they come in and actually contribute quicker?
Yeah, I think you can look at it from that standpoint of, you're looking at a player that's already had some type of development and is already coming into a system where you can be a plug and play essentially. But I think, when you look at the international game, one of the things that, and I've had the chance to interview Leonie Fee, which we talked about, and she talks about how the European game is just so structured with a lot of things. And I think, like, when you're looking at a coach that you say is old school, like Geno Auriemma, who believes in having a nice structure, I think stuff like that is things that can, really appeal to a Geno Auriemma. But I also think just the physicality and the rugged defense that you have to play in the international level, that's something that's going to appeal to Geno Auriemma as well. Because if there's one thing that Geno loves is defense. We've seen players like Anika Mule, who is a perfect UConn player in terms of what she can do on the defensive end. So I think when you look at the structure that these professionals have from the overseas game, you look at the defensive qualities, but then you also look at their polished game from just how the international system develops players. I think when you look at all of those things and combine, I think Geno Auriemma is like, yep, I want to get that.
If you had to pick out, last question on this, if you had to pick out one, and this is more, 30,000 foot view, international game versus college game, What are the biggest? I think it's the physicality is the biggest difference. I think you've mentioned that a few times.
Mm-hmm.
Or is there something that you feel like maybe American basketball is a little too more freewheeling and Europe is more structured? What are the kind of some of the major differences?
Yeah, so I think the physicality for one, because a lot of times in the international game, and we saw it in the Olympics, France versus USA, you saw like that different style where France was being very physical, being very rugged, using their bodies,
Yep.
using their length, and making things a little difficult for Team USA. And that's the type of defense that's expected for you to play overseas internationally, where that might not necessarily be the case here overseas. I mean, here in America, but then also in terms of just the overall player development, I think when you look at European players, they're just developed in all aspects in terms of ball handling, in terms of, IQ, how you look at the game, how you manipulate the game as a thinker. That's another key thing that, the international players have. Your offensive repertoire. Can you do moves? Are you fundamentally sound? Are you sealing? Are you doing all of the little things that, can give you an advantage on the court? I think European players have that, overall, I think I would say more polished game just because of all the little things that they really pay attention to detail to. Like one country that I think you can really look at that and see what they're doing at is France, because French basketball is churning out talent and quality talent at every level. At France, and another that a little bit to a lesser extent that also has some good fundamentals is Germany. You look at the Sabalis, you look at Leonis, you look at other players coming up. And I think it's really that's going to be a big factor for not just Geno Auriemma, but a lot of the collegiate coaches in terms of bringing some of that international talent over.
For sure. Well, listen, if you're a Locked On UConn fan, go check out Alfred Corriet's YouTube channel. It's the same as his X handle that we have on the screen, at ALFCORRIETTE. Go check that out. Subscribe, like, share his videos. Really appreciate you coming on and breaking down Blanca Quinones and the talent that she's bringing to UConn. We'll have you on again, man. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. Asking you guys to stay locked on. Make sure you're connected as always. As always, it's Go Huskies.